And what is up, everyone? I'm Joe DeHoyos. I am the host of Beyond the Woodline. And today I have with me Mary Bassett. Is that how you pronounce your name? Bassett?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, good. I meant to ask you that earlier, but yeah, good deal. I had to pronounce what it was. Um, so how you doing today, Barry?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's hot as hell down here in Texas, but we got AC, so it's okay.
Well, that's what they're for, isn't it?
Yeah. So you've got quite the list. You're a professional reader, channeler, psychic medium, direct contact with spirit, hypnotist, regressionist. You work with people with PTSD, ET experiencers. Of course, you work with MUFON, healing master, and a quantum healer. How do you find time to do all that?
I don't know. With my full-time job, I have a very patient family because
Right.
I do a lot of splitting up and balancing between everything. But the spirituality on, that whole list, that's really my passion. So it's less work than my spiritual path.
Right. Um, so what was your first, I guess, your first path? Was it being a psychic?
Um, I guess the first path would be mostly I started reading tarot when I was about 15, 16 years old.
Okay.
My house was very haunted, and growing up I had lots of different kind of experiences. Nothing that really shook me. It was just more having spirit communicate to me, talk with me. And then one day I went to my first psychic fair and bought my first deck and started reading tarot and been reading tarot ever since. To develop the rest of my gifts, I started in my early 30s and then has this slowly developed my skill over time through lots of meditation and spiritual working and the spiritual journey in general.
Mhm.
So it's built upon layers of developing who I am and getting back to who I'm supposed to be and my purpose in this life.
Right. Yeah. And I like that you say that who you're supposed to be because here I am at 50 and I'm just starting out, but trying to develop any skill I may have or abilities I may have. I started with my oracle cards. I started meditating. I started doing uh, Reiki. So yeah. So I'm just trying to. Here I am at 50. I guess it's never too late to learn.
No, the spirituality has no age. Everybody has these gifts. We're literally created to communicate telepathically and have these gifts. It's just as we've gotten older, we kind of grow out of them. That's why you see little babies who seem to talk to people that aren't there because they're really talking to people that they're talking to the energy that's there. It's
Right.
just we grow out of it and we're conditioned to believe other things as we're getting older. So that's what the spiritual journey is all about. It doesn't matter what age. It's realizing that you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're literally a spiritual being having a human experience. And it's all about
Mm.
walking that path.
Yeah. Yeah. And that actually makes sense. That was a good way to phrase it. I think a lot of people look at it the other way around when I think the way you said it is better. Yeah. What got you into the whole hypnotist thing?
That is actually more of a recent thing for me.
Mhm.
And I kind of always follow the signs of the universe type thing. I pay attention to synchronicities going around me because for me, that's how my guides in the universe is telling me what path I need to take. And I had over like 2 month period, like 10 different people ask me if I do hypnosis, do I do regressions? Because they're really looking for somebody who can offer that. So I thought, okay, I checked into some classes, and at the current time, I was reading a series of books called Convoluted Universe. Have you ever heard of Dolores Cannon?
Yeah, yeah, I have actually. Yeah.
Check into those books. Really,
Okay.
just mind blowing topics, and she did that all through past life regression. She wrote
Yeah.
all of these books from the information she would get from her clients, and it was fascinating because she'd go all over the world and they're always telling the same story about spirituality. So I checked into those classes and took those classes because that's really what I wanted to tap into. I want to tap into past lives people's higher selves, where they need to be on their spiritual journey, bringing them into the awakening, working with ET experiencers, because it's all about developing that spiritual core.
Do you think that the ETs are spiritual?
I do. I think when you think about Palladians, a lot
Uh-huh.
of people don't consider them ET because they're from this solar system,
Right.
but you will often hear them referred to as spiritual beings. They're they help us to ascend spiritually to a level where they're at.
Okay. Yeah. That's part of like my meditations, communicating with them. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I definitely get that. I understand that. I had someone point me in that direction when I started doing all of my meditations.
So a really good way to do that too is get out a piece of paper and do some automatic writing. So when you start to meditate, set that intention that you want to connect with your ET guide, because we have spirit guides. There are ET spirit guides as well. And set that intention and then sit in meditation for about 3 minutes to get yourself grounded and then just start to write. I guarantee you'll get a message. Hands
Okay.
down, 100%.
Okay. Hmm. I'll look into that. Do you have any like a YouTube channel yourself?
I I have a YouTube channel, Spiritual Voices, but I'm going to be honest, I don't use it very often.
Okay.
It's one of those things where what do I have time for and what don't I have time for? And that's not one of them at the moment. I'm like booked solid for the next couple of months, so I don't
Okay.
have time to sit and
Yeah.
do the YouTube.
Yeah. Um. So when you started developing your psychic abilities, what was like one of the first things that kind of validated to you that, man, this is real?
Well, it was when my grandmother passed, I started taking psychic development classes. And the biggest thing, like you said, they taught you in that class was to meditate. So I started to meditate. I would meditate a half hour every day religiously. And I started hearing voices and having visions. And then one day I heard a raspy male voice tell me to tell Marsh to use his knowledge of electricity. And so for 3 weeks, I held on to this message because I'm like, okay, this is the weirdest thing ever. Because you just don't go up to somebody and say, oh, by the way, I was meditating and I think your father came through. Because especially in the beginning now that doesn't bother me now. I can do that with no problem because I've been doing it for so many years. But at first it was weird because I worked with them. And so finally it took me about 3 weeks. I got up the nerve to tell him. He's like, oh my gosh. She goes, I'm trying to make some glasses for my grandson that has windshield wipers on it. Hence,
Oh.
use his knowledge of electricity. And when I described the voice, it was his father had come through the meditation. So that was like, and that's how spirituality works. It comes through in stages. So after that, I kind of lost the mediumship ability because it's sort of like your guides will show you, oh, you can do this and you can do this and you can do this. But first, you have to develop and take it through stages with certain gifts to be able to have the ability to use them. So that was my biggest, and that's what kept me, pushing forward with the development. Because the more I read tarot, the more I realized I don't need my cards. And now I meditate, and that's how I get my information. So when I talk about direct connect with spirit, I don't need cards. I don't need anything. I can just sit and meditate and communicate. And usually the message is almost 100%. Nothing's ever 100%, but
Right.
I I get a lot of validation for the readings I do.
Oh, that's nice. So do you still use your tarot, or you don't use them at all anymore?
I will use the tarot in the end, and that's typically if I'm doing my fairs. It's just a lot of people like the tarot cards. So I will do the first part of the reading. And what I do is I write everything down on the paper before they give me any kind of information. And then I give that to them. And then they validate to me what I connected with through spirit and what spirit I'm communicating with for them on this other side. And then if they want to, I'll read with my tarot cards, but I don't need to. It's just something, I guess, partly I started out reading tarot, and that's how I would get my messages. So it's the same deck that I've used since the very beginning. So I kind of just carry it with me everywhere.
Mhm.
So I read with them if they want me to. If they don't want me to, they still have their
Okay.
message that's written down.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think about spirit, whether it be, you know, a different entity or people who have passed on communicating with us? Um, can they communicate with anyone that they want to, or does that person have to be open to that?
Well, they could communicate to anybody they want to. It just doesn't necessarily mean that person's going to hear that message. Like some of the biggest things that I talk when I'm sitting across from somebody, and especially when I know they're grieving a loved one, the biggest message I always say is we're all energy. That's it. These are just bodies. These are just vessels holding our soul. That's why spiritual development is so important, because it's not your body, it's your soul you're working on. And so when the body gives out, a person's not really gone. They've just shifted energy. They've gone to a different frequency versus the frequency their bodies hold. And that's why some psychics and mediums tap in, because they're able to raise their vibration to that frequency to tap into spirit. So I feel like nobody's ever really gone. It's just a different way of connecting and communicating with them. Anybody has the ability to do it if they can meditate and raise their vibration.
The reason why I was asking you that, and I've told this story before, so who's ever heard it, I'm sorry if I'm repeating it, but I just want to tell Mary this story. So back in April, my mother turned 72, and my father, he's actually he passed 10 years ago. So we had a party for my mother, and it was on a Sunday. So I talked to my brother on the Tuesday because I knew that that Tuesday they were going to the cemetery. Him and my uncle and my aunt, which my uncle is my dad's twin brother, and I think my niece and my sister were all going to the cemetery to go visit my dad's grave. Um, I don't do that because I don't think he's there. You know, that and that's just my opinion. It's not that I don't go because I can't handle it. I just don't go because I just don't think he's there because I always feel him around me. But anyway, so I talked to my brother on that Tuesday, and he says like, no, we didn't go to the cemetery because it was raining and it was real muddy, so we decided to reschedule. I said, okay, cool. He says, but I want to tell you something that happened Sunday at the party. I said, okay. And he said, Madison, which is my niece, she's 15 years old. She came up to my brother and was like, hey, I keep hearing Grandpa's voice. And he's like, well, what's he saying? He's saying that he's glad that Grandma's having a party and that he's proud of us for throwing the party uh, and that she deserves it. That's exactly what you know he, uh, what he told Madison. So on that Tuesday when they were getting ready to go to the cemetery, my uncle, which like I said, my dad's twin brother, he actually called my brother and was like, "Hey, let's not go because it's muddy." And my brother's like, "Okay." He says, "But I got something to tell you. What happened at the party Sunday with your aunt? His wife." He's like, "Yeah, what's up?" He says, "Your aunt heard your grandpa's voice, and he told your aunt that he was glad that grandma was having a party, that she deserved it, and that when her time comes, he'll be there waiting for her." And I just thought that was kind of strange. And neither one of them knew that the other one heard this message. There were two. It was almost the exact same message. So what are your thoughts on that?
I would say it's just really good validation of spirit. I mean,
Right.
you can't deny that when it's the same message from two different people who didn't talk to each other. But that kind of stuff happens all the time. I would say your niece is probably a medium. Whether she develops it or not, that's
Right.
up to her. But that's possible for everybody.
Right.
That we just have to pay attention to the signs and symbols. That's a part of being, you know, awakened, is recognizing what you're seeing in front of your eyes, that sometimes that feather is not just a feather in your path, it's a message. So look it up. Sometimes when you see a bird over and over again, look up that bird. It's usually spirit's way of trying to communicate with you. If you
Right.
can't hear them, they're going to find some way. That's totally the real deal.
Yeah. And it was funny that we were talking about tarot cards and as a way to start developing. I actually bought her a pack of tarot cards about 2 weeks ago because she's been wanting some. So I hope she uses them and I hope she develops her skill.
Yeah, it sounds like she'll find it very easy to come by to develop that skill.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and she's
So
15 years old too. So that was funny that you said 15. You know.
Yeah, my mom took me to my first psychic fair when I was 15, and she was going to give me a reading, and I was like, no, because I didn't want her to know what I was up to. Like,
Oh.
I didn't want no psychic to tell on me. I'm like, I didn't know what I was in for, so I
Right.
passed on that. I didn't get my first psychic reading well until right before I started developing my gifts, and I had two readings from two different readers who said I had a significant gift. It was going to be up to me if I chose to develop it
Okay.
in this lifetime. And that's when I really started doing the spiritual work and a lot of spiritual growth.
Good. Good. Yeah, that's a good story. I like that, and it gives me hope for Maddie. So, Maddie, if you're watching, I hope you learned something today.
Yeah, tell her to get an oracle deck too, because the oracle decks are a little bit easier to read. And so it's an easier message than trying to
Okay.
memorize a book.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll. You know what? I'll get her an Oracle deck too. So I'll take care of that on my end. Like I said, that's what I started doing. I've got 3 decks now, so I'm just starting out. So that's been over the course of the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. I've been getting different decks just for myself and trying to learn and develop and open myself up to more and more messages, I guess. Um, Channeling. Um, where did that come from, and when did you start doing that?
Channeling is something that came to me. That's what I started to do the first thing after reading with tarot. And then I would, before I would have my clients come for a reading, I would meditate and write everything down. And so that's where my channeling comes from. Is it took me a long time to call myself a medium because you automatically assume mediums can hear voices all the time. That's how they communicate. And it's not necessarily so. A medium's just connecting with spirit. And I get all my downloads and all my messages through my crown chakra. I channel versus having it come through my ear chakras. And sometimes it does come through my ears, but typically
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting all my information as downloads. And that's one of the things that I spent a lot of time developing because it's getting out of my own head and recognizing that the thoughts going on my own head are not mine, that I've opened to spirit. And that's why I'm very careful to not open unless I'm ready to do my readings, only because I do channel that way.
Okay. So, when you're downloading or receiving messages, is it uh, from entities in this universe? And the reason why I ask that is because I know someone who, I guess, over the last 20 years or so of his life, he hears messages and he says they're from beings that are in different dimensions or different universes.
And typically any kind of beings that you're going to communicate with are going to be from different dimensions, only
Okay.
because this is the 3D dimension moving to 5D. And so when you're communicating with spirit, typically spirit roams the astral plane, which is the 4th dimension, was where we go when we're dreaming. And then like your spirit guides are the 6th dimension, and the archangels are 7th dimension, and then on up. So depending on the vibrational frequency of whichever entity that you're communicating with, that's where you're tapping into. So a lot of times it depends on how you can raise your vibration. When I'm doing my readings, I'm always connecting with my guides. And then I'm connecting with that person's guides, asking what they want them to know. And then I have my gatekeepers open the doors to the spiritual realms and bring forth spirit that's connected specifically to that person that I'm reading, because I don't want anything just to come in. So that's what my gatekeepers for, is only allowing spiritual energy in that's for the highest and greatest good, for one. And then 2, that belongs specifically to that person that I'm reading. Otherwise, we're just not going to get the message we're supposed to. And typically that's how I'll start to channel, is as soon as I open up those doors, I'll start to write. And that's when I start downloading all the information that spirit has, the messages for the person sitting across from me.
Okay. Yeah. A little backstory on my friend. Like I said, he says he receives different information, and I totally believe him. He receives different information, different messages. He actually died twice, right? So he's died and come back twice, and after that's when he started being able to hear these messages. He said at first he had no idea what's going on. He thought he was crazy. Until he started hearing voices that he recognized, which like one was his sister, and then one was his wife's grandfather, um, and then one was a friend of his son that had passed away. They all had messages to give to their loved ones. Um, but yeah, that's something that, like I said, I guess over the last 20 years that he started to hear these messages and hear the voices. And he says he even heard them say, "Hey, look, this is what we're doing over here. We've got this going on over here. Look what we're
Hmm.
doing." So he hears stuff like that. But he's not really interested in developing them or anything like that. He says it just happens and he doesn't ask for it. But he can also tune it out too, so that's a good thing, I guess.
And yeah, you can choose to either listen or block it off and close it off. You don't have to do it permanently, but there's times where you don't want to listen to spirit have a conversation with you. There's a time and place for everything.
Yeah, yeah. He says that whenever he's heard it, that it's like come out like right in his face or like right in his ears.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
And so it
Um,
definitely just shows that, because when he, flatlined, basically, it tuned him in kind of to the cosmic whole, the universe. And so as he was crossing over and then got brought back, he brought those gifts back with him. It kind of like not only fine tunes it, but it's like a light switch. They turned it on. And now he's a beacon. And that's why Spirit's going to continue to communicate with him, because they want him to pass on his messages. And I fully believe that Spirit would definitely say, this is what we're doing over here. Now, if you could do this and this and this and this,
right.
because that's all Spirit wants. Spirit just wants to communicate. Spirit wants a relationship with the people that are still on the 3D level. And that's sometimes I feel like why you get hauntings and things like that is because Spirit just wants to be recognized. It just needs to be communication. And so they make noise until you recognize it, and then you communicate. Sometimes, a lot of times, from my experience, I've gone into homes where people have felt like it was a negative entity and they've been having issues for years. Just going in there and communicating with the spirit and saying, okay, this is how it's going to be. You can have the yard. And then crossing over spirit, it's sort of like as soon as they were recognized and someone talked to them, they quieted down. It's peaceful.
Yeah, and I've asked him. I said, "Do you consider yourself psychic?" Or and he's like, "No." He says, "I just feel like I'm like some sort of conduit. Something that just send messages, from the other side." He goes, "I don't think I'm psychic."
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Yeah.
that comes with its psychic abilities too, but that's just the more dominant part of them.
Right. What's up, Sally? I'm in Houston too. Yeah. Yeah. This, I'm trying to get my list back up here. Healing Master and Quantum Healer. What exactly are those two?
So the healing master is the Reiki master and the energy work that I do. And
Oh,
that's
nice.
typically manipulating the energy of the chakras and removing negative energy and putting the Reiki energy in to help balance out the chakras. And by doing that, a lot of times I've worked with clients who I'm bringing them into their spiritual awakening. Now, the quantum healing, that comes from when I do the past life regressions. We always go back to a past life, and it always ends up to some correlation to the issues that they're having in this lifetime. And then after we do that past life, we move forward, we tap into the higher self. And so the quantum healing is all about healing on a cellular level. So they come with a list of questions. I tap into the subconscious, the higher self, and together we correlate the healing process. So we do the energy work going through clearing out any kind of cords that are attached to that past life, doing healing on a cellular level so that when they wake up, they don't have those ailments anymore. Because sometimes we carry energy in our body and we have ailments because our body and our spiritual side is saying, listen, this is what you need to address. Sometimes when you can figure out why you need to address it through a regression, you're able to heal it right there on the spot. And it's a deep level of healing. I've had people who come in with back pain and on disability, and they really don't know why. And then finding a correlation in that past life, healing it. And now they're back up and they're moving, they're going to the YMCA, they're going back to school, things like that, where it's I'm the facilitator asking the right questions while the higher self and the person's body work together to heal. That's what quantum healing is.
Yeah, like I said, I just started doing that, and I got the Essential Reiki by Diane Stein.
Okay.
That's yeah. So that's what I've started out with. So that's what I'm doing. Uh, that's the first book. If you have any other recommendations, pass them along.
Okay.
I'll be happy to check them out.
Reiki is such a good thing. I always tell people, especially if I sense any kind of healer, ability within them, I'm like, go get Reiki. Because even if you don't use it on anybody else but yourself and your family, you're doing your family a lot of benefit. People don't really realize it because we tend to not believe in things that we can't see. But once
Right.
you see the effects of performing Reiki with somebody and the healing aspects that come from it,
Mhm.
it's encouraging to continue on all the way up to the master level.
Okay. What about shamanism? Have you studied that, or do you practice that?
I haven't studied a whole lot of shamanism myself.
Okay.
So when I'm doing my energy work and my healing, I will call upon my Native American guides to help me do that.
Mhm.
But I have never studied shamanism with a group.
Okay. Yeah, I've been interested in that, but I just felt Reiki was just a better place for me or a better fit, so that's what I went with. Do you do paranormal investigations?
Um, I'm not like a full-time paranormal investigator. I have done them.
Hmm.
Usually I'm more all about doing the spiritual work and going to events and doing readings. But I think the beginning of May, I did do a gallery reading with two of my psychic medium friends on the USS Edson. And I do believe it was Bay City in Michigan. We did a
Hmm.
paranormal investigation there. And I've done small things here and there, but I would say that's probably the biggest one I've done.
Okay. Yeah, I've only done one investigation that was in Mineral Wells, Texas, which is up around the Dallas Fort Worth area. That was pretty cool. It was pretty fun. But like I said, I lived in a house that had a lot of activity in that place. We've been all been poked and touched on the shoulder or whatever, heard voices, seen figures walking across the living room. So yeah, it was a fun place to live. It wasn't scary. It was, uh, even though a couple times we got scared, whatever was there wasn't trying to scare us. I
It's
say
just
scared,
exciting.
but yeah, and I say scared. It's probably more freaked out than anything else. But
And that's probably my thing too, is I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little afraid of the dark.
right,
So to do like full blown paranormal where all the lights go off, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. I'm kind of a chicken when it comes to the dark.
right. Have you ever experienced anything evil or with bad intent?
Not that I am aware of, other than human beings, but
Yeah.
not really. And I've had people ask me that, if I worry about bringing something home with me, if I go do a house cleansing or I cross spirit over and things like that, if I'm afraid that I'm going to bring anything negative. And my answer really always is it's all about that vibration. So negative energy or entities usually attach to a low vibration. But if you're
Hmm.
working on yourself spiritually and you have a higher vibration, they're not going to want to try to connect only because the vibration doesn't match. They're not going to attach themselves to something that's too high. Now, that's probably different for a physical medium. And I don't consider myself a physical medium, but I do know quite a few who have taken on spirit. And so they're very careful about the homes they go to just because of what they might not necessarily carry home with them, but within them in a sense. I've never experienced that myself, but I know of others who have.
Okay. Um, when you've done your readings, is there anything or any one specific event that like even shocked you as far as what came through and what was right?
Um, Typically, it's very, very rare that I have somebody who the reading wasn't accurate for. I think you know, a lot of times they always break my heart. only because it's somebody who's sitting across from you that's lost somebody. And when I'm giving the reading, I don't have any idea of what I'm really channeling until they connect. I think the most heartbreaking one, and I'm not even still sure exactly what was it. That it was a weird statement, and I told her, I said, I don't know what this means, and I don't channel spirit typically like that. I don't do doom and gloom, but the spirit said, "Dead man tell no tales," and so that she needed to watch out for this. And there was a tale that she needed to tell for this gentleman who was coming through. And still, I get chills. And she just started sobbing, and I still, to this day, I don't know what exactly, because she's like, I don't want to talk about it. She was, it's spot on, but I'm not talking about it. And then she went over with a group of friends. So there was something in that, and that was impactful for me. And probably because that's like the most recent one, that it broke my heart just seeing her sob and not having any more information than what I gave her. Obviously, she lost somebody who, was more than likely murdered. That was my take on it. But she didn't want to talk about it. So other than just giving her that message, I couldn't do any more than that. Then, like, one it's always, I read a woman, I think it was a couple of weeks ago too, about 2 weeks ago now, and she had just lost her husband and he had come through. But that was a beautiful message, because while she cried, she was, I feel like he's not gone. And that's always my goal when I'm giving these readings, especially with people who have lost their loved ones. I want them to know that they're right next to them, that they're not gone. They're in a different way, and they just got to tap in. That's it. They have the ability to do it. They need to believe that spirit's really not gone. They're with us. They want to be heard. So those are the two most recent impactful ones that kind of stuck with me the last couple of weeks.
Okay. And what's it like for you? Like after reading, are you drained or are you good to go?
When I do just a regular reading, I don't really get drained. My last event, the one day I did like over 20 readings. When I get done doing that and I finally sit and I'm done for the day, yeah, first I get like a real big psychic high, and then I peak, and then I'm like, I'm done. I can barely stay awake type thing. But I spend like one of the reasons I make this statement professional reader, because I take a lot of time and a lot of energy before I prepare for those days, where if I'm going to do something big like that, I sit in meditation for a long time. I spend a lot of time raising my vibration before I start the readings for the day, and I supercharge my area and all the items I'm going to use for my readings, whether it's just crystals or my signs. I spend a lot of time raising that vibration, because really it's all about that vibration to be able to carry that through. So at the end of the day, when I'm done, I'm less tired because I protected my vibration versus it being continually, because as a reader, you kind of have your vibration like bombarded all day by spiritual energy. So especially when they're sad and there's a lot of grief with the person sitting across from you. Right. So it's important to protect the energy as much as you can.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any particular crystals that you use in particular, or?
Some of my favorite, I like the black tourmaline and black obsidian, because they're black, and the black is a very protective color. Typically when I go to an event, I'm always wearing mostly black because it helps protect my energy. Hematite, I have large pieces of hematite and then clear quartz clusters, because that amplifies the grounding. And then I have blue howlite, because that helps take you to the next like spiritual realms. So that's why I grid that out, and I place all the crystals around there, charge all of it, and then prepare my energy while I sit and wait for the event to start.
Okay, that sounds good. And when did you get involved with MUFON exactly?
Actually, within the first month of starting the regressions, the head of Michigan MUFON, he asked me if I would ever be interested in helping ET experiencers. And I said, of course. That's actually one of the main reasons I got into it. Like I said, I was reading those books, and the information was just amazing, especially the ones with the custodians, with the ET experiencers. I wanted to be able to find my own answers. So it's almost like a paranormal investigation, but in a different way. I'm trying to find, evidence, real evidence that can't be fabricated. So that's working with MoveFind gives me that opportunity to work with experiencers, and some of the sessions are just mind blowing with the spiritual information that you get, the conversations you have with the higher self. That's amazing in itself. And I've done lots of regressions where we have tapped into ET that has come through, that's connected to that person, that gives information. So just, it's been a short ride so far, but I'm enjoying that ride and looking forward to what else kind of information we're going to delve up.
Right. Yeah. It may be a little bit off topic, but what do you think about the government or the Pentagon really releasing that Tic Tac video?
Well, back right before COVID hit,
Mhm.
remember we were talking about before the show, so having experiences where it feels like a dream but it's not a dream.
Right.
So
Right.
I had one of those experiences, and I actually channeled ET, and she gave me her name, and she gave me a timeline. And this is, and then she told me something big was about to come, and I said, okay, just protect me and my family from whatever it is. And she said, we will. And then she showed me a timeline where between now and 2023, the government's going to start leaking UFO information because they have deemed it for us to be able to believe in it now. So they're going to leak us this certain information to allow us to believe that ETs actually exist when a lot of us have already known that for a fact.
Yeah.
And then she just talked about, more about, 2027 and 2029, of how impactful those years are going to be. Like they were literally going through an Armageddon right now. And now I got on the rampage, but I think it's just evidence, those videos, that we're just being leaked, and we're going to see more and more. Like I can almost see from what I've channeled a fake invasion that the government saves us from to make it look like we have to fear
Oh,
ET in a sense. And that was kind of what I was being shown coming through. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I think it was a very strategic play. I think it's real in some shape or form, but it's only as real as they've allowed us to see it.
right. Yeah. I think it's real, and but I also think they're also going to give us whatever they want to give us. I know they know a lot more than just that video. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
they probably got
Yeah.
tons of better pictures, tons of better video, but they're kind of breadcrumbing us right now, and I I kind of see their view because as far as people go, I think for the most part, a lot of us are ready for it, for confirmation, at least from the government.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think there's probably a lot of idiots out there too who aren't ready. So you know, it's always going to be those few that ruin it for everyone else. I think
It'll take the fun right out of it for us.
right? Yeah, yeah. I think it's the same thing with the Bigfoot thing. I think the
Mm-hmm.
government said, yeah, they're real. There'll be crazy people out there trying to hunt them down. When they probably just should just leave them alone. But yeah, what do you think about Bigfoot? Yeah, we start talking about that. What do you think about Bigfoot?
I've never had my own experience per se, but I'm a believer.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of things out there that we don't even realize or recognize.
right,
It's virtually impossible for us to know every kind of creature that's out there. And who are we to say that Bigfoot doesn't exist?
right,
Mothman. I'm a complete, the spiritual person to me thinks that, maybe it's a dimensional thing. And that's why you only see them every once in a while, is when
mm,
you tap into that dimension and they come through. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know.
right.
But yeah, I definitely believe in it. There's a reason why we don't see them, probably because they're smarter than most of us.
Yeah, I think
But
they're probably the smartest thing in the woods, really.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're called the forest ninjas, so I think they're, I think people go camping and hunting. I think they probably see us a lot more than we see them. You know,
Yeah, more than likely.
yeah. And you talk about other things out there that we don't know about. I'll tell you another story. I actually was talking to this girl. She had a Bigfoot sighting, but then she told me that she had a story about where she was going swimming and she went too far And when she realized she couldn't go back up to the top, she was running out of air. She saw these two hands come in front of her face like this, and it opened up, and a big air bubble came, and she was able to breathe that air bubble in and make it back to the surface. You know, I think there's a lot of things out there we don't know about. Whether it was a mermaid or not, I don't know. But I used to never think about that. The mermaids existed, but I think they just may very well exist, unless it was one of the underwater ETs.
Yeah, you never know. Anything is possible.
Right.
A lot of people say if you're looking for ET, looking up at the sky is not necessarily the right place. Look into caves, look underwater. If you do your research on, you'll find a lot of evidence that points to the underwater civilization type thing or underwater caves where ET would roam more.
Right. Yeah. And it's probably easier for them to avoid us if they're underwater because we're all above land. So.
Yeah, that's true.
And while we're on the subject of weird creatures, what do you think about elementals, whether it be fairies or gnomes or anything like
I believe in them in a sense. It's not something I tap into myself. The only thing I can make a real connection with is I remember it was probably when I first started into my spiritual journey. I was out in the woods hunting with my husband. Not because I'm a hunter, I just like sitting out in the woods. And I remember just taking pictures because I was bored. I had meditated for a little bit and I started taking pictures, and I got a picture, and in the background you can see Native American people. Like you can literally see their faces. Like you cannot not see their faces. There's like a man, a woman, there's a young child, all sorts of elementals. So while I might not necessarily tap into it per se that I'm aware of, I totally believe in it because I had the picture to prove it. And it didn't. You can't lie. Just looking at the picture, you can look at it normally. You don't even have to blow it up, and it's just there.
I don't know if you can read the question on the screen for you. It says, how do I more develop my intuitive skills?
The biggest thing is the meditation. That's the first step always to developing those gifts. But really, belief in it, what you're trying to develop, that's number one. If you don't believe in it, it's not going to happen ever. But getting a deck of oracle cards, my favorite way to start to develop was to draw 3 oracle cards, shuffle them, ask what it is I needed to know for the day, draw those 3 cards, look up the meaning, and then meditate 5 minutes on that meaning. Because you're going to get information, and the more information you get, write it down, research it, because I can guarantee you're going to get messages from your guides of what you need to be learning, working on, and which direction you should be taking with your purpose. All you have to do is ask, and you'll receive answers. Just pay attention to the answers.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, like I said, when I started meditating, I think that's when I started opening up to more and more different things. And I don't think I've ever told anyone this story, but I'll tell it. Uh, so as I got better and better at meditating, the first thing I saw was a blue being. It was a female. She was blue. Um, and as I started telling more and more people about this, in private, they were like, "Yeah, I see a blue being too." People who like meditate, you know. So it was just a strange coincidence. And I don't know if she's one of my guides or what, but I always see her.
I would say if that was the first thing you said, were you doing a specific type of meditation?
What was that now?
Were you doing a specific type of meditation, like a guided meditation, or were you just sitting
Not a
quietly?
specific. Yeah, I was just sitting quietly. I was listening to some soft music and just focusing on my third eye. Really, that's what I was doing. You know,
Another
trying to
good way too is
feel
to
it.
focus on your pineal gland, as well as your third eye,
Yeah.
because the pineal gland is attached to the third eye. And actually, they say that the pineal gland looks like the eye of Horus or a pine cone, and that taps you in to the secrets of the universe. So a lot of times they say when you're connecting with spirit, that's where you're really going at that pineal gland to connect. So work on decalcifying that and things like that, where you can actually open that up along with your third eye. Because a lot of times, I'm looking at Joshua's his message, it is hard to shut your mind off. So I do the guided meditations and focusing on pulling in spiritual messages through the back of my neck. That because that's where energy flows when you're doing your meditation. So I sometimes I can sit for 10, 15 minutes straight without my mind wandering off. It always wanders off. It's like, when you're a dog looking and seeing, oh, squirrel. You can't help it. But it's all about
Right.
just coming back and focusing back in. Guided meditations always work perfectly for that because it's giving you something to focus on. So
Right.
guided meditations on the third eye, your chakras, the pineal gland, and that will actually start helping you to open up a lot more.
Yeah, and Joshua, I would just say it just takes practice because I was there too, and I'm still there, you know. But yeah, I remember when I first started doing it, I would lay down, and next thing I know, I'm thinking about bills, I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about what I need to do, what my grocery list, crazy stuff like that. But yeah, it just took practice for me to, and like I said, I still do it, and I'm glad to hear that you say you still do it too. So
Yeah, well, that's because that's our ego. So it just naturally are always thinking. That's
right,
what we do. So, and that's what's important about meditation is it trains you to not think so much all the time. And when you can quiet that, you connect to source, you connect to your higher self, the other part of you that's on the other side still.
right. So what does like your family and friends like in your immediate circle think? What do they think about you?
They're very tolerant. No, they're very accepting of me. Probably at first, I know I don't hide my spirituality. I don't hide my spiritual practice. I don't hide, being a psychic medium. I did at first, but you really can't develop your gifts full on until you truly accept yourself and just not give a crap what anybody else thinks.
Right,
And so now I'm at that point. Sometimes my kids think I'm weird, but their friends will meet me and then think I'm super cool. So then apparently if your kids' friends think you're cool, then you're okay.
right,
But yeah, sometimes they get weirded out because I don't necessarily sugarcoat what I'm trying to say. So I'm sure what comes out of my mouth, like if I talk about ET, they look at me like I'm weird.
right.
It's just, but I'm gonna go in and watch Ancient Aliens. I'm just gonna say just because it's interesting and it's for me
Absolutely.
that's intriguing. It's better than watching news.
Yeah, definitely. But I'll binge watch anything we're doing with the pyramids. I don't know why, but I love pyramid stuff, and I'll watch any show. Man, if it's got to do with pyramids and how they got built and all the different theories on how they got built, man, I'm right there. I will definitely watch it.
Well, they
Thank you,
say
Joshua.
too that the city of Atlantis actually existed,
Right? Yeah.
and they were developing just like we were, where you know they're at that point where they can move things with their mind and they could communicate telepathically, but they started cloning, but they would clone humans and animals. And so they got so far out of what their purpose was, it was like
Mm.
they got destroyed. So when they got destroyed, a lot of them, the survivors, went to Egypt. And so that's why I feel like a lot of people on their spiritual journey, especially in the beginning, they're very drawn to the pyramids. They're drawn to the Egyptian gods. They're drawn to Egypt. Why? Because that's where it all began. It's just slowly, as time progressed, they grew out of all of that knowledge. And that's what our purpose here as a galactic community, as a spiritual community, is to keep raising our vibration and remember where we came from and keep building on those gifts so that everybody has these gifts, that they're mainstream and not necessarily I have to go somewhere to get a reading. I can do it myself. That's always my goal, to teach people everybody can do this themselves.
Mhm.
They just have to raise their vibration and meditate more.
Yeah. And I don't know. I personally think that meditation is very key to anything that you do in life, really, whether it is spiritual or just going about your daily business. I
Mm-hmm.
think meditation can really just shut the rest of the world out and let you focus on you, if anything.
That's very true.
Someone asked Galactic Federation of Light with a question.
Yes.
That's actually my cousin.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, do you have anything you want to add to the people, or where they can contact you? Do you have anything going on that you want to talk about?
Well, they can find just if they look up Mary Bassett on Facebook, they'll find my face there. They can always send me friend requests. My Facebook page is Spiritual Voices Across the Golden Veil, and I think I'm booked up with private events in July, but I'll be at the Michigan Paracon in August, the 26th, the 27th, and 28th, and then all of August, the Hippie Festival at Houghton Lake in Michigan, and the Hippie Festival in Lapeer on the 20th. I'll be there in Michigan, and then UFO Con in September. I'm all over the place, so if they just go and like my page, they'll be able to follow me.
I've never been to a hippie festival, but I see a lot of them. I definitely want to attend one.
They're always fun. They are. Everybody's always, at least everybody's happy.
Right. Yeah,
You
that's the
can't go
main
wrong
thing.
with happy.
Yeah. I definitely have some hippies in my life that I love them. I'm trying to read this real quick. Okay, all right, I'm not reading that one. All right, well, cool, man. Well, thank you very much for joining the show, man. We got to have you on again. There's a lot more I know we need to talk about, and let me see what Joshua has to say here. I can barely sleep, but I need to get back into my own chakra. There we go. I'm sure that was
Yeah,
something.
and trying to meditate before you go to bed really does help with that. It's
Yeah,
just putting that energy down and grounding it versus letting it stay up in your head.
yeah. Actually, I'll meditate before I go to bed. Next thing you know, I'm out like a light. So that helps me go to sleep. So I'm not like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep, it's good for that.
Well, cool beans, Miss Mary or Mama Mary. Thank you. Like I said, thanks for joining the show, man. I really appreciate it. And
No, thanks for
man, keep
having me on.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. Hopefully, we can get you back on the show when you're not as busy. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, so uh, keep in touch. And I'm not sure if you're a member of my group or not, but if you aren't, join it, and you can share whatever you want to share on it, whatever you got going on.
Oh, sounds good.
Yeah, cool beans. And everyone in the chat room, thanks a lot for participating. Thank you, Joshua. Appreciate you
Yeah,
joining.
thank you.
Well, cool beans, everyone. You guys have a good night, and guys have a good supper if you haven't eaten already. And we'll talk to you guys later. And hold on, real quick, Mary.